And yeah, we are finally online. So I'm here with Better. Hello, Better.
Hello.
So today you're gonna talk about the new DSR, the Unit of Measurement 2.0. So Better, could you introduce yourself and then do your presentation to us?
Yeah. Yeah. Here, there's actually no slide about myself, so let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a Java consultant, currently helping customers in Europe, especially large clients like automakers and others, to work with Java EE, Glassfish, Payara, and especially how to make use of those in microservices. That's currently a very asked for experience. And yeah, right now I'm also helping a large client by introducing the next generation of their microservices for at least the next decade or so. And I have also been with Java for almost as long as it exists. And I have been in the JCP executive committee until recently. And as far as I know, I was the longest serving elected individual that was ever in the executive committee for about 9 years. And I'm one of the spec leads of JSR 385 together with Ottavio and Jean-Marie Detoy from France. And I was also one of the spec leads of the prior JSR that you see here on the history page, which we finished in fall of 2016. So it's about 1.5 years ago. It went final. And now we are just starting a new version. So let's have a look at one of the reasons why we do that and why we do it now. The metric system will be revised around the end of this year, at least the so-called General Conference on Weights and Measures, or CGPM, is expected to approve that when they meet in Versailles. So all countries get together, Brazil, United States, hopefully. But since they are not a country that uses the metric system, they probably don't care about it that much. But nevertheless, all the other countries around the world, which are nearly all except 2 or 3, they are supposed to accept this new revision of the metric system, where for the first time, you might say it's virtualized or simply based on mathematical equations rather than having a piece of metal that weighs 1 kilogram in a big vault in Paris. That was the so-called reference kilogram. And the same existed for meter and others. And I believe the kilogram is actually the last remaining artifact that is still in Paris. But because it starts rusting after all these years, they figured that now it is the time to actually use certain equations based on natural constants. And this way, all the base units will be related to each other, and there will be no more need for these artifacts. If it's approved in November of this year, then the new SI standard definition should be effective at the end of May 2019, because that was when the metric standard and the metric convention started in the first place. So the time when the metric standard and the SI standard became what it is now under its name was 1960. That was the year that John F. Kennedy was elected as US president. And for example, Real Madrid won what is now the Champions League against Eintracht Frankfurt. Also, yeah, with a very high number. I'm not going into the 7 goal thing, talking to a Brazilian, but What also happened in 1960 was that Brasilia became the capital of Brazil. So because this revision of the metric system is the most significant change since it was introduced in 1960 under its current name and form, that's why we also decided that the new units of measurement standard should be a 2.0 version and not a 1.1 or 1.2. And also not do a maintenance release, but instead actually do a brand new major release. Of course, Java also keeps changing quite much. So we have Java 10 coming out in the first half of this year. And as it looks like, there may be a Java 11 about half a year later. So the JDK keeps moving very fast. Other projects like Microprofile also, they keep increasing their revision numbers quite rapidly. So we also figured it makes sense and it justifies this major change. But it should at least last for probably a decade or more under the 2.x, unless the metric standard, of course, decides that they will do another revision. But I think in their time frame, these things happen much more slowly than even the Java community process or other open source communities work these days. Other than that, we also plan to embrace Java 8, things like lambdas, the new datetime API, something similar we already did in the Java SE8 implementation for JSR 363, and where possible align with new Java 9 features, especially things like the multi-version jar look very interesting, so that we only need a single API or also a single reference implementation and not have things like backports or two different implementations. Then we also plan to have a format feature for the quantity and not just the unit, so that number and unit together can be formatted as one entity. Define the prefix also as part of the API, so prefixes are more easily interchangeable and supported by the API, and support something that we call a compound unit or a compound quantity, which would be, for example, 5'2" or 6'10", or 1 hour and 20 minutes and 3 seconds. So these are compound quantities, and we plan to somehow support them at least on a quantity format level or in a more model way that we actually model each of these. There's something similar in the temporal amount interface of JSR 310. Those of you who may have seen that or looked into it in more detail. And we may do something similar, but for more than just a single quantity and for more than just 2 or 3 units, like the temporal amount. So it has to be a little more versatile because it has to support many different unit systems, both the metric system, but also things like the US system, imperial system, or other systems that people and their applications need. And where possible, also improve JVM language support and a few other features that may not be part of the JSR, but build on top of it, including support for metrics in projects like Microprofile. We already have projects like Parfait in that area, so we also hope to broaden the use. Here you can see the milestone definition for version 2 on GitHub, and we also have a project defined for the API itself. The project in this case is the stage of the early draft release, and the milestone is actually the JSR when it's supposed to go final. Here are a few more schedules. So it was approved about a month ago. We plan to have an EDR in the second quarter, a public review ideally in the third quarter, and a proposed final draft roughly towards the end of the year, and the final release in Q1 or no later than Q2 of 2019. So it's ready just in time before the new SE standard comes into place around May of next year. Here are a couple of conferences and events that we talked about the JSR and its predecessor, especially. So these talks were mostly about JSR 363, the version 1.0. Some of these were also about the Kotlin support. For example, on the left-hand side, you see our friends from Tenkiv who created the Kotlin implementation of JSR 363, and they would also likely do this for version 2.0, at least once it's final. And in the Java user group Mainz, there was recently a meetup 2 or 3 weeks ago where members of the Java user group presented both JSR 363 and also other language bindings, including the Kotlin binding. So there are Java user groups around the world, and many of them look at the JSR or look at the old one, and they are also quite excited about some of the new features that we are about to add. We have currently 6 expert group members that are listed on the JCP page, assuming the PMO has already updated it, and 2 contributors. There are also probably at least 1 or 2 contributors who are pending, but wants to help with this JSR. And we have about 32 GitHub users that contribute to the wider project. That includes things like demos, bean validation, JSON, language bindings like Kotlin, or the mentioned support for other environments like Eclipse Smart Home, Eclipse Microprofile, or others. So at least around 1/3 of those are constantly contributing and very active, and the others maybe occasional contributors. Everything is found on GitHub. Unit API as it was in the first version. The RI, we made a survey before starting version 2.0, and we found the name Indriya, which means senses in Sanskrit, in the Indian language, or the official Indian language. So we gave the RI a new friendly code name, and version 1.0 already implements JSR 363. So switching to version 2, in most cases, you could just use your code as it is and just replace version 1 of the API with version 2 of the API, replace version 1 of the reference implementation with the final version 2.0, and your code should have almost no impact, at least on existing code. And then, of course, you can make use of some of the new features. But you barely have to change anything in your existing code if you start using Indriya already. There are several JSRs that helped with the first version. Of course, also Ottavio has been very helpful creating the Java SE port. And now that Leo has other duties with V2Com, especially trying to somehow revive Java ME embedded, he stepped away from the spec lead role because he's too much involved in those administrational duties in the executive committee, or also things like the Java ME working group. So Ottavio kindly stepped in as spec lead because he was also one of the major contributors of the old JSR, and the other 2 are the previous existing co-spec leads, Jean-Marie and myself. So we had several chucks in the expert group or contributing to the wider project. I believe from Chennai, there are actually 2 chucks now, the Chennai chuck and the Madras chuck, and the chuck Hyderabad. And as we saw, the chuck Mainz also did a presentation, so they are also at least spreading the word, and maybe they might also be involved as associate members and contributors. I will try to talk to them at JavaLand next month, whether they may also want to get more involved. Here's how you can get involved. we have two mailing lists on Google Groups. The first one is more for active developers, including members of the expert groups. And the second one is more for end users. But there are certain things that we actually try to mirror. But for example, discussions on the internals of the JSR will happen mostly on unit dev. But both of them can be subscribed by anyone. And anyone, even if they're not member of the expert group, are happy to reply. So there's no moderation unless somebody tries to spam. And everybody is happy to contribute in both of them. But one of them is more for the people who actually try to shape and improve the JSR and the libraries around it. And the other one is, for example, for end users like the Smart Home project or others. Yeah, we have Google Groups. We have a couple of GitHub chats, a Twitter account, and things like Stack Overflow, where there are also questions and answers about using units of measurement in Java. All the artifacts other than Maven repositories can be found on Bintray, but there are also Maven repositories if you use Maven or Gradle to build your application and want to use either of these libraries. And we also have some Linux bindings that are used for Performance Copilot. So certain Linux libraries, including Performance Copilot, that includes the Parfait Java extension. They can also use Linux images to install our libraries. Here are a couple of use cases. Of course, there are certain more now that are not here on this list, but transport, logistics, industrial energy. I also have some clients to use this on a very large scale for a container terminal recently. It's used in healthcare, and we also add a few new use cases that are around the cloud, for example, performance measuring. The first entry on the list is, for example, PCP Parfait, which is the Java binding of the popular Performance Copilot metric and performance monitoring solution maintained by Red Hat. A Geo API and several projects, including Adopt-a-JSR or projects under the Eclipse Location Tag umbrella, are using JSR 363. Eclipse Smart Home is also using it. Eclipse Science and UOMO. And the Hibernate Validator also has some support planned very soon. Apache Maya uses it to allow defining configuration in a unit-aware way, similar to, for example, what type-safe configuration API allows to do. There's a company that Oracle recently acquired called Opower. They provided JSON support, and the Jadira bindings that add support to, for example, Java Money or also JSR 310 or Yoda Time and other popular libraries in relation to JPA and Hibernate. They are just about to add JSR 363 via the Indria implementation. So that means they will also be able to use version 2.0 more or less instantly without changing the code. So they are the first ones that actually use the Indria implementation. Most of the others use prior implementations like the UOMSE or the reference implementation. Okay. I guess we don't have any questions from Twitter or somewhere in the audience. Are there?
Hello, I'm just checking.
Are there people in the live feed who may have questions or?
Yeah, they have.
Yes.
First one is, how can I do it with JAX RS? Or I can in Actually, there are two questions about serialization. The first one, how can I integrate with JavaRS? And another one is about database.
About what was the second question?
Yes. How can I put a unit in the database?
Oh, in the
That can
database.
convert.
Yes,
Yeah.
the Chadira library that I mentioned on one of the later slides. Let me just try to look it up on GitHub. Okay, it looks like I cannot share the browser more than once but yeah, let me just do a screen share of the entire screen. So the Chadira library adds support for Hibernate. So that is how you can get data into the database using Hibernate. That, of course, includes JPA. And it allows you user types. I think they probably haven't updated it, or they are still working on the next version, but the next stable release and general availability of Chadira is supposed to support JSR 363 via the Indria library. So that is how you can use JSR 363 with Hibernate. And as soon as 385 goes final, it would just require a new update of the Chadira library that will then switch to the next version. But since the reference implementation is already there, Indria 1.0, and they are using it, so there will be almost no impact if you want to change from one version to the other. It will just be a version bump. So you may have to use a new version of Chadira, but you can start using the upcoming next stable version of Chadira that supports JSR 363, beside all the other types that we see here, including Java Money, Yoda Time, and others. And that version will also support JSR 363 for units of measurement support.
Okay. There is the same question, however, to JavaRS and JSON.
Yes, for JSON, we actually have something that built on top of the OPower library for quite a while. I think the only thing it does not currently support the new JSON binding JSR yet. So that's probably something else to take a look at with version 2. But you can use with version 1 with JSR 363 and Jackson, which I assume is also relatively popular, especially it has been around for a little longer. There it is. Yes. So this was a fork that I think they no longer actively maintain it because, as I mentioned, the company was taken over by Oracle. And as we see in other cases, Oracle tries to consolidate and focus on some major products. So they try to focus on the cloud business by OPower. It is a company that allows you to compare your electricity bill with different vendors and then choose the best vendor. So that was acquired by Oracle, and I'm not exactly sure what they do, but I'm pretty sure it will be something in the cloud where Oracle allows you in the Oracle cloud to also choose the most effective electricity bill. So Oracle currently does not actively maintain this library that OPower created, but a former employee has put this into his own personal GitHub space. As you may notice, what he did is he started with the earlier org units of measure classes, and here in the UOM project, the fork that I created is fully compatible with JSR 363. So that allows you to use JSR 363, and this is currently still the SE port. So migrating this to Indira will be the next task, but with the most recent versions of the Java SE port, plus the final stable version of the JSR 363 API, you can use this library to bind JSON strings. We just have a very brief look here. It uses the unified code for units of measurement inside the JSON string. So almost every unit that exists in the world can be covered. UCUM is something that is also used especially for the healthcare sector. And here it serializes and deserializes those units from JSON strings using the JSON binding for Java. So we may have some interesting goal in the near future to migrate that to Eclipse JSON and the new JSON binding JSR. But of course, since JSON has been around a little longer, that doesn't mean that people stop using JSON. So we will probably offer more than one binding, and this one is already there, and it can be used with JSR 363 as of now.
Okay, no further questions.
Mm-hmm.
Better, thank you for your time.
Mm-hmm.
We in SoJava appreciate it, and I hope you soon for a presentation about unit measurement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Then thanks a lot for sharing this, and also thanks a lot for your own participation as co-spec lead, and hope to see you soon, either online or hopefully maybe on a conference in the near future. For example, EclipseCon France, if that's possible, because Jean-Marie also lives there, and maybe we can actually both get together and meet him. So we will have a face-to-face meeting of all the free spec leads.
Oh, nice.
That's in June.
Bye.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
Yeah.